Greetings, everyone. I'm Karen Vaughn from 106.7 WTLC, and welcome to Sister to Sister, our Empowerment Summit, a day filled of empowerment, motivation, and inspiration as we focus on our health, our self, and our wealth. And today's panel, I'm really loving the title, and we are going to dive in. It is Don't Just Listen to Black Women, Support Them. And I have an amazing panel that we will take this discussion further with. I have Kelly Marshall, I have Chris Stewart, and Kiana Warren. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Good to see your faces.
Great to see all of you as well.
Kelly, I'm going to start with you. We're going to do a brief introduction for you. You can introduce yourself and also answer the question, what do you do at the Mind Trust and how long have you been in education?
Wow, well, that's a loaded question. So first, I am the Senior Vice President of School Support and Incubation with the Mind Trust, which is a local nonprofit here in the city that works to ensure that all students have access to high quality schools. So I have the awesome opportunity to work on bringing talent to the city and then also supporting our existing charter and innovation schools. How long have I been in education? I stopped counting at about 30. So I have held every role from teacher to school leader to superintendent most recently. So just excited to be here.
Good to have you. Chris Stewart, introduce yourself and tell us about your role at Bright Beam and the host of the 8 Black Hand podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation. I am Chris Stewart. I am the CEO of Bright Beam. We're a national network of educational influencers. We spend all of our time trying to lift up the issues and prioritize the issues that we think will make a difference in the lives of the kids when it comes to their educational achievement. In terms of how long have I been in this game, right now I lead a national network and organization, but I'm going in my 4th decade as a parent in every kind of school, public schools, traditional schools, charter schools, and even some private. And along that journey, I became a more engaged parent advocate, activist, even a school board member for a period of time for a 4-year term. And eventually that led me to think that there needs to be more of us in terms of Black men, Black fathers, raising our voices on behalf of our children in support of our families, our wives, our communities, and education. And that led to the development of the 8 Black Hands podcast, which is a weekly podcast of 4 Black men discussing education on behalf of the 8 million Black children that are going into schools every day that aren't ready for them.
Nice. Thank you, Chris. Kiana Warren, introduce yourself, and you are a Black woman in STEM education and was recently appointed as the Associate Executive Director at Purdue Polytech Schools. What does that mean and entail?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Kiana Warren, and I am, as you stated, the Associate Executive Director for Purdue Polytechnic High Schools. We're a network of 3 high schools and growing who our mission is to increase the pipeline of underserved, underrepresented students into STEM careers. Hopefully they matriculate through Purdue University, but just making sure we have that clear pipeline. And so unapologetically, we're here to serve and make sure that we're uplifting communities and we're working to provide opportunities that didn't quite exist. So I have the privilege of working with the schools in all aspects and any way I can provide support to our students and our staff.
Excellent. As you can see and hear, we have a diverse panel that really can dive into this subject matter. Don't just listen to Black women, support them. And our focus is going to be the importance of not just listening to Black women in education, also supporting them and wanting to be heard. So I'm going to include a few stats. Black women earn 71% of master degrees, 65% of doctoral degrees conferred on Black students. Also, according to findings compiled in a study by the National Center for Education, Black women have been obtaining degrees at a consistently high rate for the last 8 years and counting. And just hearing those few stats, panel, what does that mean to you? What does that say to you?
Well, I think for me, it means where are they, right? So if I've been in education for over 30 years, right? And when I think about just the opportunities that I have had to be the sole decision maker for a network of schools and to look out amongst my colleagues and be the only Black woman, it just makes me wonder, then where are they? Right? If we are, increasingly getting these degrees and it still is not where we need it to be, but there's still that at a disproportionate rate of what it looks like at the decision making level. It makes me wonder, where are we?
Mm-hmm. Chris,
I'll
Kiana?
Yeah, I'll jump in there and say, first of all, can we congratulate Kiana on her upward
That's
ascension?
right.
I mean, she just threw that in there and just kind of like let us go
That's
by,
right.
and we didn't even celebrate. So we're gonna celebrate that for a second here.
Absolutely.
Um, um, this is what I think it means to me is that despite what the circumstances and conditions are, Black women continue their tradition of leading from the front, even when there are adverse conditions. But when we read stats like how many degrees they're getting, how much they're advancing, there's been a 300%, I think, increase in Black women getting degrees since the 1970s. That sounds great until you start asking the questions about what are they being paid? Are they being listened to in the rooms that they're in when they're sitting next to a mediocre man who's ascending faster than they are when they're the ones with all of the ideas? In education specifically, you can look at a mini situation where there's a district being run by one person and behind them there are 3, 4, 5 Black women in different departments who are really running the thing, but they're never on the cover of any news story about it. That's why I love today's focus on not just to support Black women, not just to see them, and not just to like make slogans about them, but to actually be physical about making sure they're getting their just rewards, making sure they're getting the shine they're supposed to be getting.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with everything that's being said. And some of the things that I notice in education is we as Black women are called in once a mess has been made, and we're expected to clean it up when we do it. And sometimes still don't get the respect or the positions that we deserve.
Mm.
Absolutely. You have me thinking of Betty Wright, the cleanup woman. How many times have we done that? And go from one risk management crisis to another
Mm.
in the same day.
Yeah.
In the
I'll
same
even
day.
add to that. I'll even make it a little bit worse. In some cases, Black women are brought in to collect the blame for something
Yep.
not going well in
Mm.
education. And there's a big difference. Sometimes, as a Black woman, you can take over a role that was formerly inhabited by a founder of an organization or somebody that actually didn't get the job done. And when you come in, you notice that all the rules are different. All the expectations are higher for you suddenly. Suddenly, there's higher expectations. I think many of us probably listening or watching to this have heard from grandparents, you got to work twice as hard to get half as much. That adage continues. That's not like an old saying or slogan. For many women, they're living that in the roles that they take on. It's great that you have the first Black woman leading an organization, but if you're not paying attention to the fact that it's harder for her to raise money, it's people are more scrutinizing of what she gets done. They look at her metrics twice as hard as they looked at anybody's metrics before her. Then you're not really solving problems if you don't solve that. If you're not talking about those issues.
In some instances, I noticed that opposed to looking at the good that is being done, it's what one feels is not being done or the challenges, opposed to focusing on the good and balancing the good and the challenges, right? How do you navigate that when you know that you're not being heard, you are in crisis management mode, and you're there to actually be the scapegoat as many times? How can one navigate that? What are some just ways to be able to power through?
You've got to stay committed to your truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, because of the situations that Black women are placed in, either to clean up or to assume blame or whichever, a lot of times we get caught up and start drinking the Kool-Aid, right, too soon. And you get these false accolades and then you realize that you have strayed away from what your actual truth was. And the best way to navigate that is to stay grounded, know to your audience, and know your objectives. We have to stay ahead in terms of being forward thinking to make sure that, because it's not just about us leading, it's about us also making an opportunity for the next Black woman to come up. And I don't know if other races feel that same responsibility, but I know that there is not one role that I've stepped in as a Black woman that I haven't thought, am I making a space for the next one to come in?
And
That's
I
good.
think about continuing to center the students, to continue to center the families, because that's who we are there to serve. It's not about us. And you got to hush out all the noise and know what you need to do for yourself unapologetically. And I also know when I come on board to an organization, I make it very clear that not only am I making the path for more Black women, but I'm bringing people with me. So if there isn't space for that now, you'll have to find another person. So make that very clear.
Yeah, I think that's really important to think about, like in terms of every one of you that are leading in anything. Karen, you involved, Kiana, Kelly, all of you. I like to remind people that there is always somebody who's proximate to you, who's looking at how you move and what you do, and they are taking in notes and cues. And by people, I mean someone who is not as far down the career path as you are, but they're proximate to you. They can see it a little bit, and they watch and they take in cues, and how you move becomes part of the way that they move. And I think this is one thing we don't talk about with Black women. They do build pipelines of other people who have seen it in them, in their predecessors, so then they get to become it further down the line. I wish, with brothers, I think we should be thinking about this more, especially in nonprofits, about succession planning and about what Kiana just said. Like, move as a team, bring people with you, and raise people up. Um, but I just hope that everybody knows, when you're fighting the fight and you're alone and it seems like you're being isolated in your work, there is somebody watching you somewhere, and they're seeing it. And it could be a niece, it could be a cousin, it could be somebody somewhere is seeing how you move, and they're taking cues from you. And I hope we all take that role seriously.
And in some instances, individuals you don't even know.
That's right.
And now
They
that we
see you
have,
on.
social media or just out and about, and just seeing the way that you move and how you interact, and you could be inspiring someone when you are having the worst day. So that was a great point, that someone is always watching. And at one point also, again, is there someone always listening? Is there a difference between listening to a Black woman and supporting a Black woman?
I'm leaving the Black woman to answer that one. I got an opinion, but
Definitely, I can tell the difference of when I'm being listened to and when I'm being supported, right? And it always comes to a time in which the final decision, right? When it's an opportunity for me in whichever role to have that final decision making power, if it conflicts with the majority, right? Or if it's a difference of opinion that could then put someone else in a space of discomfort, I think people are more willing then to, I don't even know if it's support. I'll say they'll offer, enough to just, appease me more so than truly support. Is there a difference? Yeah, I think there's a difference. Support comes with action, right? And I can see the support. I should be able to see it. Listening, oftentimes, you can misinterpret if someone's listening to you. And it all comes down to, if you have to be that final decision maker, if it's in conflict of the vast majority, then you'll know whether or not you're supported.
I think listening, I think I get listened to all the time. I think it's a popular thing now where it's like, I'm going to have an empathy interview. I'm going to hear what you say. But it's a difference when other people put their privilege on the line to say, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust people from the community. I'm going to believe not only just believe what you're saying, not just listen, but I'm gonna put action on the line. Whether that's saying, you know what, I trust you. I'm gonna put you in this position, or I trust you. When you say you're feeling a microaggression, not only am I just gonna listen and have empathy, but I'm gonna do something about it, and I'm gonna call it out. And so I think oftentimes, in my experience, women are listened to more as a way of, like Kelly said, like appeasing and trying to get the conflict to go away. But I have to name, like, I have been so supported over the years. But I think that's a unique situation for me. I've had a lot of, I think the term is like sponsors, people who have put their reputation on the line to get me where I am today. But not everyone, not a lot of Black women I know have been lucky enough, and that's not okay.
I think that point is really important to make, the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. I think what's really in vogue is to be a mentor, and it doesn't cost you much. You know, mentorship is really like a sounding board in some ways, or help you figure out your problems. Sponsorship is when you're so dedicated to the person, the individual, that you're willing to sacrifice something, put something on the line for them being the leader and putting them out front. Either your social capital, your financial capital, your own money, something. Like, it costs you something. And many of us have mentors, and we have a mentorship kind of abundance, because everybody wants to be the good guy. Sponsors, not so much. I will say one other point too. I grew up in the South, and I was used to Black women being in authority positions in my family, my community, my schools, and just in my world, in my universe. I now live in the North, in a place where Black people are not the majority, and that same situation I grew up in is not the same. And if you were to ask me if Black women are listened to in professional settings in this situation, I don't think that they are listened to as if they are authorities, or if they're in authoritative roles. There's many leaders, especially male leaders, and especially non-Black male leaders, want to put Black women on the Sally Hemings program in their organizations. And it's a professionalized version of what has existed for many years. They love you as a mistress to their goals and their success, but they don't love you necessarily as the person in the room that has the cognition to make the real damn thing happen. And that's kind of a culture shock for me, based upon how I grew up versus to how I live now.
That was good.
That is, there's a fear of that, Chris. It's a
Yeah.
fear because if we can match, if not exceed that of the capacity of others, then what does that mean? Then that means that that woman is coming in to take my job, to take my authority. You're right. That's a threat.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to sound like no one's going to believe what's about to come out of my mouth, but I believe it to be true. There is a situation where a person might be more willing to hire a person that they think is lesser qualified, out of fear that the best candidate that is a Black woman in their field might be competition they don't need, for instance.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
they love a more controllable, a more moldable person than an assertive, capable person.
But and at the same time, they don't realize they're shooting themselves in the foot because they're not being stretched and they're not growing. They stay right in the same place, doing the same thing over and over again.
That's right.
And two things are going to happen. One, the woman is going to realize that and leave, or she's unfortunately going to stay in that environment. And it's not benefiting either one of them.
Yeah, I would also say that, like, I would love to hear from you all, because I'm learning on this thing. But even in trying to hire Black women, trying to help Black women to be comfortable with being 100%, this is your role, this is your thing, you do this, take it as far as you want. There is like an inner voice that makes people doubt themselves when they don't need to. There's like a voice that I think you have to coach for, because many men who are very mediocre are not spending much time having imposter syndrome. They've got the opposite of imposter syndrome. They got first person syndrome, right? And honestly, oftentimes the most talented person in the room is very quiet. And you have to ask later, well, I didn't want to say a thing. I didn't want to make, whatever. And I don't understand the internal voice on it,
As we continue, this discussion on listening, who do you feel needs to listen and to support Black women in education?
That's a great question. Kiana, you want to take that? Look, I immediately went to the parents, and I don't know why. Like that was, I want the parents to have a trust in a Black woman's capabilities to not just nurture and mother, but to lead. And so again, that's my initial reaction is who needs to hear that. We could go, legislation, all of that, but the people that are closest to the work, I say the parents, they more times than I would, than I wanted, I could see a Black man walk in the building, and this is no shame, no slam on my brothers, right? But if a Black man walks in the building, oh, he's the savior. There we go. We got a Black man finally, and you've had, like we talked about earlier, that Black woman that's been running things this whole time. And so I think that there is a missed opportunity for parents to also truly rally behind our Black female leaders out here, to make sure that that they understand that they're aligning with their beliefs, that they are trusting in the moves that they're about to make. Again, parents are immediately the stakeholder group that came to mind for me.
So I think everyone should listen and support Black women, because we've been, if you look at our history over, let's even go back to 1619, like we have been the educators for years, and we deserve the respect, and we deserve we deserve to be supported and loved. And I also think about, when I think about parents, I also think of parents as educators too. And I feel like a lot of times in schools, Black mothers are not listened to, are not valued for knowing what their child needs, what their child wants. And I just, and also with what Kelly was saying, I completely agree. A lot of times I've noticed Black women can be cornered into this thing of like, well, you're the nurturer, or you could deal with that student who has a quote unquote attitude. So we get out of decision making and we get pigeonholed into specific. But what I would say, to answer the question again, everyone should listen to Black women, because when we listen to, I have so much evidence that when we listen, support, trust Black women, that kids win in education.
Yep. And, and thinking about, the kids as well, when we are looking at Black women in education, being those that are educators, right, want to be listened to. That mom, that guardian, that auntie, that grandma, she wants to be listened to too in regards to her child. So it's like a full circle moment of more listening, more understanding, having more compassion, but being able to listen to create action. For the administration to win, the students need to win, the parents need to win. So how do we all begin to listen to each other?
We got to make sure we're all talking. We started this conversation looking at data from, just the amount of degrees that women are obtaining and all of that. And we're missing an entire population of women out there that may not be degreed, that are more capable than, a 1,000 people sitting in some of these roles. But we've got to make sure that, there's a balance. We're elevating their voices, allowing a space for all voices, but we got to talk. We have to get beyond, that fear of being misunderstood, to being thought of as we're so aggressive. Where I don't care if people think I'm aggressive. If my point is coming across and it's for what's best for kids, you can call me aggressive. You can call me a lot of things, but I'm going to get my word out there. And so, empowering, Black women to say, you know what, I can't worry about how I'm coming across, all, to the point in which it prevents me from actually speaking.
When you talked about speaking, it took me back to a clip early in the early days of COVID, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but I'll break it down quickly. There was a clip of a teacher, I want to say in a Florida school, that was having issues with parents and teachers with the cameras on and virtual learning. And she went to a board meeting and spoke her piece, but she was just so powerful of what she needed in her own special way, very direct. And it got across so much that it went viral. And she was heard. What she supported is the question. She was heard. And it just reminds me of the conversation that we're having now of more talking, more being open and honest with how we feel, especially when it comes to education, because life is an education. And how do we all come together? And I'm thinking of Kelly and Kiana. Do you feel supported in education? Not only listened to, but supported.
You know,
So
go ahead, Kiana. Go ahead.
So over my career, I've had some people have been really supportive, and then I have some people who have listened, and some people who haven't listened. And what every experience I've had has grown me and helped me to become hopefully a better educator. And every closed door I see is an opportunity as well. And one thing that I have realized too is sometimes as Black women, we're not even always listening to each other, and so I think that's really important that we're working together collectively. I think over the years it's gotten better, and the city of Indianapolis has gotten better. We've had a lot of women like Kelly Marshall, who has paved the way. So definitely shout out to her for that. But I think collectively as a whole in this city, in this state, in this country, we're not where we need to be yet.
Thank you, Kiana. There's not much more than I would add. I think in my trajectory, like I've been very blessed to have been supported, but I also I have come from, a space of just being prepared to take it on my own if I need to. So whenever there came a time in which I did not feel as though I was supported nor listened to, I had the courage to then move on because I knew that there was another opportunity out there for me. And if there wasn't, I was going to create one. So, to Kiana's point, we are not where we need to be, but Indianapolis in general has taken some huge steps that, over the course of 30 years, no, I didn't anticipate it to be as evolved as it is now, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah, when you just talked about creating your own, Marva Collins just popped in my mind of just, leaving the school system, creating her own school. Yeah. Many doubted her and her students, and they persevered. Just such a powerful story of taking action, as we're doing with the discussion today. And Chris, I'm gonna pull you back in because I know you're gonna drop another gem. How have you demonstrated in your role as CEO of Brightbeam or as a co-host of the 8 Black Hand podcast that you have both listened and supported Black women?
I mean, it's a good question. So my support in that area, in that category, is not determined by like my role at Brightbeam or even on the co-host. It's just something that's a personal ethic of mine in life, just in general. But I have the especially good fortune of being led by Black women. So a lot of what I know is because I have Black women mentors who are actually educating me over long periods of time, not just about business or whatever, but just about education and everything that I know and care about in the world. So whenever I have the opportunity to create a platform or to create an opportunity where somebody has their role to flourish on their own, right? I started a women's foundation, worked it for 2 years, replaced myself, worked myself out of a job. And now the Wayfinder Foundation is run by one of the most powerful Black women that I know, has taught me some of the most in my life, Nikemi Levy Armstrong, who is doing great things with that foundation. And my life's work has been like, if I can do that more than once, if I could just replicate, like, platforms to me are very important. I used to work for an organization called the African American Leadership Forum, which was it was a forum of about 1,400 Black leaders who would come together on a regular basis. And it started with Black men coming together every weekend to talk about what we're not doing and blah blah blah, and whatever. And their wives were looking over the like, so what y'all doing? You're not gonna invite us to the table, blah blah blah. So they started their own meeting, and they were having theirs became way more organized, much quicker, much faster than the male meeting, and they started a whole organization out of it. And what I saw out of that, number one, was a couple of things I think are important. The first one just is platform building is important. Building the space. I heard Kelly earlier say something about make the space. If people need to talk and they need social connections and they need mutual support, they need to form private conspiracies where they help each other. That can start with 3 people having breakfast on a regular basis, just every the first Monday of every month, for instance. That turns into 8 people having that breakfast, and where they know and keep track with each other. What's going on in your career? What's going on with yours? And a mixed group where they can help each other out, because I can guarantee you someone in your network is going to become an executive director, and their first 90 days are going to be very important, and it's their first time, and they're going to be wondering about a budget and about all these different strategic things, where someone else in that role would have a lot of help. They're going to be silently trying to figure it out because they don't want to look bad, right? It'd be nice for them to have a sisterhood breakfast that they go to, something on a regular, on someone has made the space for them just to gather and talk. You asked what I've done. I actually have set up spaces like that over periods of time. I can remember a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago, taking 30 Black moms from 5 different states to the Congressional Black Caucus so that they can experience it firsthand and asking them the question, does this represent you? And just listening for the response, like just wanting to see them experience. That trip was so enlivening and enlightening, because number one, the answer is no, that didn't represent all of them. Number two, certain things that came out of it, I thought I knew a lot about education. One thing that came out of that trip was the number of people in my group, my 30 people from 5 different states, who all had IEPs with their schools, who all had, 4 of them had been banned from coming back to the school for asking too many questions about their IEP, and they lived in different states. And I started asking the question, how are y'all having the same experience in different places that nobody is listening to or hearing? I would have never heard that if I hadn't created a space and pulled people together and just listened to what they were talking about rather than what I wanted to talk to them about. So I believe in that. I believe in creating spaces, platforms, and connecting people so that they can hear each other and create mutual support with each other.
You've definitely demonstrated that support. And, as we talk about ways that we can listen and pull everyone together, what are some of the systematic ways that we can support Black women in education?
I think systemically giving the opportunity. So that could be providing funding, providing job opportunities, giving invitations to the table. And when I think about the table analogy, I always am like, or just destroy the table and just make it to where everyone is welcome and feels that sense of belonging. And I think sometimes Black women just need that outlet, like Chris was referring to say, am I crazy? Is it just me that this is happening to? So I think that level of support is there too. Fair hiring practices. Goodness, there's just so much there. Access to special fellowships. A lot of times decisions are not even made in the space where you think those happen. Getting invited to those conversations that happen after the meeting or before the meeting where the real decisions are made. So there's a lot of avenues that systemically could support Black women, but a lot of it comes down to power, privilege, and money, and just redistributing that support so that everyone's winning.
The only thing I would add is opportunities like this, like to continue articulating the reality. We started this, this discussion off with data, right? The other is, and this is something that Chris and his colleagues are good at, it's articulating the reality, but then challenging us to move, like, and mobilize and move forward in not just, growing and developing ourselves, but what's in the best interest of the students. So everything that Kiana mentioned in terms of how to move systemically, but then clearly articulating the reality and then challenging us to get further educated, to mobilize, and everything that we said before, to position ourselves in such a way that we are inspiring and influencing others to move in our space, in that same path.
Absolutely. Overall, why does it matter? What kind of results can we expect if we're listening to women? We're listening, but we're not supporting.
Mhm.
Because then it feels like it's a vent session. And then I said what I had to say, and then it goes away. It hasn't gone away. It's still an issue that compounds over time.
So I would say that listening and not supporting is what's happening now. And if we continue with those practices, we're going to get the same results for kids that we've gotten for years, for decades, for centuries. And it's not okay, because it specifically has held Black students. Those are the most affected. And I also think one of the direct results of listening to women but not taking action or not supporting is that Black women are getting burned out, they're getting tired, and they're leaving the profession at high rates. And that again is detrimental. So that's my biggest fear, that we lose a lot of talent out of education because of the lack of support. Because there's only so long that you'll continue to do things that are causing you direct harm. And I know some women who have left jobs or the field of education completely, Black women specifically, because they're just not getting the support, and they needed to be somewhere where they can really affect change more rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would think that the risks are very different for white world than they are for Black world. The risk of not listening for white education world, you lose some teachers, you lose some educators, you lose some talent here or there, but you scramble and go and try and replace them with another group of probationary white people, or you find another group of, like, folks to take the seats and the roles and whatnot. But when it comes down to what we lose in terms of Black world, we lose some of our best and most fluid thinkers who can get in and understand issues on our behalf. That is traditional to us. Traditionally speaking, the role of Black women educators, for instance, was helping the community understand how we prepare children to engage in democracy, a democracy that didn't want them. And they were taking on many roles. They were school mother, they were community organizer in some cases, they were actual assistants and partner to the community. They would help us understand, this is what you should be pushing for, this is the stuff I can't get in my school, or whatnot. It was a connection, and it was a partnership. We lose that if we lose Black women because they're getting burned out, they're tired. The number one reason that Black educators, period, leave the system and leave education is that they feel like they couldn't make a difference. That's what they report in exit interviews when you ask them the question, why did you leave? The reason they left was because they felt like they couldn't make much of a difference for the kids that they were trying to help because of the system. So the system will just continually try and replace you. And oh my God, we only have 2%, Black teachers. Maybe we should try and make it 3%, and maybe we should, hire some diversity and inclusion people or whatnot. That's how they look at the loss. I look at the loss different. Black people are trying to accumulate Black educational capital. We're trying to accumulate power. We're trying to take over the apparatus that educates our children. And if our Black women are not being heard, listened to, or put into roles where they can make a difference, that is an asset that we are losing. We can't look at that as just like some roles or some positions. That's like our asset base being declined. And we need thinking people, active thinking people who can understand spreadsheets and stats and numbers and practice and pedagogy or whatnot. The rest of the system doesn't look at our people as thinking people in that way. We have to. This is our brain that we're sending in. If they're getting burnt out, or underpaid or treated in ways that they shouldn't be treated, and they're leaving, we all lose. Our kids lose, our parents lose, our political agenda loses. So we can't let it happen.
Yeah. Agreed. And as we continue to pay it forward and move forward, when we think 5, 10, 20, even 50 years from now, what type of landscape of support, listening, and action do you hope that we will create for Black women in education?
Mm.
I think just a landscape that is more welcoming and appreciative of the gifts that we have to offer. It becomes, really tiresome to always have to go into, your next profession, your next field, your next job, and prepare for battle, right? To prepare to be heard. So, if there are opportunities that, society can evolve into a space in which it diminishes some of that need to come out. So what people would say is aggressive or direct, and just welcoming and appreciative of the skills and talents that we have to offer. I think that would be my greatest hope.
Mm.
Chris, Kiana?
Well, I'm leaving space for Kiana.
Thank
Of
you,
course,
and received.
Yeah. When I think I think about a future where we don't even have to have conversations like this. And when you ask the question, it's like, of course not. That like, I mean, of course, women are listened to and respected. And so I just see a world where um, there's just support and love and all of those great things that Kelly talked about. And then a world where, because I think one of the biggest things I think for me is like, when we're in meetings, why do I have to be that person who brings it up? Like, why am I the only person who, I can't be the only person who cares about our kids. I can't be the only person who sees
Right.
what's going on. So I think it's a world where the weight of the educational world is the weight isn't just on our shoulders, but it's a shared responsibility, and that people get mad. Like there's some stuff that people should be really mad about, and some of us are a little too calm about it for my liking. So I see a world where this is just not even a thing, where it's just like, of course we educate all kids well. Of course there's not a gap in attainment for kids. Of course kids see themselves represented everywhere. And and my thing is and I'm dedicated to like, I'm in this for the long haul. I'm in this until we have that world. And until we do, you're going to hear from me.
I love that part.
Yes.
Karen, let me just answer the question just like without the positive spin on it, right? I'm just gonna be honest with you because I feel like that's always my job in life. Um, one of the lessons that I think that Black people learned early on in the United States is how to persist without hope,
Right.
how to persist when all hope does not look like it's coming, and that was a skill set. That was a survival skill set that exists within us today. It's hard for me to think about hope in the future when I think about what we're doing to even like girls right now in their development and their developing years. We are hypersexualizing, problematizing, awfulizing Black girls in education, in schools, in ways that's crazy and ridiculous and doesn't give us, we don't deserve hope if we allow these things to persist, what's happening to them in their early years. The ability for them to just be children and just come to school and just be children who are considered childlike and considered equal to any other child. We have not even accomplished that in the United States right now. In a $700 billion organization called public education, we still problematize Black girls, push them out. We don't like their speaking, their voice, that we don't like the way that they stand, they walk. We problematize their dress. We do things to them that we don't do to similar white girls growing up in other places who are exhibiting many of the exact same behaviors. And because of that, like that is the future of Black women, right? Like Black girls are the future of Black women. So what you do to them, you're doing to the future of Black women, right? So that kind of is like hope dashing to me. That is not like hope inspiring. That's hope dashing when we look at the treatment of what we do to young Black women, young Black girls, Black teenage girls. In every area of their development, we problematize them in ways um, that must stop. That has to stop if we really care about and want to support Black women.
Well, look at what society's sensationalizing, right? And for us to think that that is not systemically targeting Black women, that absolutely it is. If we look outside of the school at what is being sensationalized through social media, through every means that we can think of, it is specifically targeting Black females. And it goes back to my beliefs is that's a way to keep us in our place. When we started to elevate, then, oh my goodness, there are certain professions that would never have even been heard of as being acceptable that are now, well, that's just a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's systemic, it's intentional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an intentional tug of war.
That's right.
Yeah, long standing.
Yeah. Well, we still have work to do. Sounds like at one point or in time, we'll need a part two of listening. And maybe it's listening and listening well and supporting well. But I really appreciated the conversation from all of you today, and you're leaving us something to think with and to start the conversations not only at home but with our children, with our educators, and in education as well. And as we go to our last question for the panel, and this question is for each of you. Give us one sentence to sum up today's conversation, or one sentence that urges all to listen and to act on the voices of Black women. I'll repeat the question again. Give us one sentence to sum up today's conversation, or one sentence that urges all to listen and to act on the voices of Black women. And those of you at home, I hope you wrote down the question as well, because we would love for you to do the same. Panel.
So I'll start us off. Today's conversation, if I could sum it up, it's a challenge to each of the Black women out here to ensure that we are staying true to ourselves, recognizing the need to continue to move in a space where we're not only elevating ourselves but others, and to also recognize what the power that is within us to impact change, and the need for us to accept these challenges and move in a space that continues to uplift a population of people that continues to be held back.
Nice.
So I'm gonna keep it really simple. Because Black education and Black minds matter, listen and support Black women.
So you did bring it home with the real kind of elegant statement there. Now you don't put me on the hot seat. Listen, I love all that I heard today, but to me, the most important thing that I can think through in supporting Black women is to defend their right to lead with authority, defend their right to own and have dominion over the thing that they are expert in, and to not try and get in the way or poison it with any of your own interference, with your need to correct, your need to educate them, your need to let me help you be better, any of that type of stuff. The true kind of courageous male leader in this world will know that they're working with geniuses, and they will do everything possible with their resources, their power, their social capital, to allow Black women to lead with authority in the things that they have dominion over.
Thank you for that, panel. You all have been amazing. Thank you, Kiana. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Chris. And thank you to the Mind Trust, our good friends at the Mind Trust, for sponsoring this panel, to where we are all learning to listen more to Black women. And not only listen, but support. So let's start today.